एक क्वेश्चन है मुझे, जैसे अपन देखते हैं कि करण जौहर एक टाइप की मूवी बनाता है या राम गोपाल वर्मा एक टाइप की मूवी बनाता है, तो क्या सत्यजीत रे को भी एक टाइप की मूवी के बकेट में डाल सकते हैं? मतलब
एक चीज है, डोंट बी ऑफेंडेड बिकॉज ही इज बीइंग कंपेयर्ड बाय दीज नेम्स, दैट्स इट।
ऐसा कुछ नहीं, फिल्म मेकर्स है तो ऐसा कुछ नहीं है। तो आई थिंक हाँ, तुम्हारा सवाल जो है कि प्रॉब्ली नहीं, आई डोंट थिंक सो उनको तुम ब्रैकेट कर सकते हो अबाउट एनी स्पेसिफिक टाइप ऑफ मूवीज।
तो मतलब उन्होंने सोशल इश्यूज या फिर थ्रिलर या फिर रोमांस या हर जॉनर में उन्होंने मूवी बनाई।
डेफिनेटली आई थिंक अगर तुम जो जॉनर बोल रहे हो, आई थिंक इफ यू वांट टू टॉक अबाउट अ जॉनर, राइट, सो you want to talk about what? Let's talk about social issues, okay? So, there was a movie named Mahanagar, which is English translation of it is Big City. 1960s movie, where he is talking about a housewife have to go to work in an office because and then starts earning more than her husband.
अच्छा.
And what exactly the social turmoil and everything happens. Incidentally, that was the debut of Jaya Bachchan. Jaya Bhaduri was there.
Okay. Oh, in that movie.
Yes.
Oh.
So Mahanagar. Okay. And then he has got something called Calcutta Chronicles, which is Simabadra, Putitoli and Arnett in that. These three movies were made in 70s. Bengal in 70s was really, the Naxalites, there are Naxalite things, there was a lot of, disturbance which was going in 70s. And, and again, in India also, the emergency, emergency came in reflected in his movies about in John Rondo and everything around that. So he has never shied about showing the politics and the real issues which is there. Oshoni Shankar, again, it comes from a novel, but it talks about a famine, jo sukha padta hai and how exactly a family survives around that. And very incidentally, I think this is another thing, a movie on sukha, okay? And he decides to do that in color.
Okay.
And the Indian critics but गाली दे कि क्या हो रहा है, सूखा दिखा रहे हो कलर में।
So what's wrong in सूखा दिखाने in color? मतलब मैं समझ नहीं पा रहा हूँ।
सूखा जब तुम कलर में दिखाओगे तभी तुम्हें कॉन्ट्रास्ट समझ में आएगा।
Okay.
Otherwise नहीं आएगा।
अच्छा, because greenery will be absent and it will be all yellow.
तुम कलर में दिखाओगे तो तभी तुमको समझ में आएगा कहाँ पे क्या है। So social issues, he has always, even till his last movie,
which was
Agantuk, The Stranger, or Goloshotru, which is People's Enemy, all these movies and everything around that. Every movies had some social topics in that. It might not be that burning topic around that. Sadgati, again, Munshi Premchand's story. It's we know about it. It talks about an lower caste guy, who dies in the house of a upper caste Brahmin, and how exactly that Brahmin wants to dispose the body. It is social. It is very, very, very relevant.
तो इसका मतलब ये है कि उन्होंने जितनी मूवीज में काम किया वो every movie had a social issue.
मैं इसको नहीं बोलूँगा।
उनका क्या हुआ?
इन्होंने जो define किया अभी, I think he was not picking and choosing deliberately to show rural things. So if I see the emotions, एक जगह पे उसने एक big city की एक woman, and again name is Mohanagar, but it is about a woman and a husband
in a big city.
In a big city, how it is graduating, and Sadgati is again a very rural thing. Sukha is again.
नहीं पर ये सारे social issues
नहीं मैं
कोई issue नहीं बोलूँगा, वो social context है.
जब start किए, I think your question was, I think the categorization. This was my take on the social issues, how we tackle.
अच्छा, okay.
Now you talk about thrillers. Okay, if you talk about thrillers, I think we all know Vyomkesh Bakshi.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So Vyomkesh Bakshi is not.
No, it was written by Satyajit Ray Enthusiast. But he made a movie on Vyomkesh.
अच्छा.
चिड़ियाखाना.
But एक बात बताइए, what I know about Satyajit, he himself had a character who is actually a detective. So why did he pick another character by another writer?
Okay. So again, you need to think about this is what is the versatility of Satyajit Ray, right? He has his, it's not that, he has, when we are talking about the socialism and everything, वो हाँ, ये दूसरा writers के story लेके उन्होंने movie बनाया है, बहुत सारे बनाए हैं. But then there is one point of time which basically starts from around 1961 onwards. His writer self starts coming.
Acha, he wrote as well.
Yes. He was a prolific writer. He just didn't not only wrote films, which I'm going to talk about now, but he wrote plenty. He wrote about stories. I think we touched upon those Netflix Ray and all these things about his short stories, his science fiction, his thriller.
Wow.
Okay. Now on this thriller, coming back to the movie, thriller, I think there was one what you said about Bomkesh, but one of his famous characters has been Felu, or the Pradosh Mitra, who was a detective. Okay. And he made 2 movies of that, and it was an out and out thriller. Okay. One was actually made in Rajasthan.
Okay.
Called Sonar Killa, which is Golden Fortress, and the Golden Fortress was nothing but the fort of Jaisalmer.
Oh, great.
Okay. And in the Jaisalmer, everyone knows about. If you go to, I think you both are from Jaipur, right?
We are
both
from Jaipur,
Not from Jaisalmer.
Just from Jaisalmer, but I think they did so many shootings in Rajasthan, and Jaisalmer Fort, still people talk about Satyajit Ray, and I think there are a lot of places they still remember that, because of Satyajit Ray and all these things about it. So I think this basically probably you guys would want to go to Jaisalmer and watch the
just
movie.
To see that.
Just to see that,
right?
yes,
Absolutely.
So again, it talks about वो क्या बोलते हैं हम लोग इंग्लिश में क्या बोलते हैं वर्ड को, हम बंगाली में और हिंदी में क्या जातिस्वर, जिसको पुनः अर्लियर लाइफ के बाद याद आता है,
पुनर्जन्म
नहीं याद आता है. Now you're in a new life, but you can remember your past life.
Okay, I don't know.
So हम लोग जातिस्वर बोलते हैं उनको बंगाली में. तो वो एक बंदे का ऐसे एक बच्चा जो बोलने लगता है, मेरे पास हम लोग एक सोना के गोल्डन किले में रहते थे, and that's how the story is, and how his detective fellow, how he goes in there and how he saves the boy. So this boy gets kidnapped. So how that boy, he saves the boy, and how he finds out what was the killa is all about. It's all done in Rajasthan.
Okay. So basically he's writing social issues, he's writing thriller. What about romance?
Romance has come very subtly in his movies. Okay.
Because he himself had a romance, no? To fight for.
अरे भाई रोमांस सबकी जिंदगी में होता है यार. तुम्हें क्या लगता है फाइट नहीं किया तो रोमांस नहीं है? रोमांस नहीं होता यार, क्या है यार? रोमांस है.
सही है.
तो रोमांस नहीं, मतलब
देखो दादा, मुझे एक सीन याद है. आई थिंक इट इज not from Pather Pachali. What was the second season where he gets married and
that's again
Sharmila Tagore's first movie.
Achha.
It was the third part of the trilogy.
Yeah.
उसमें एक सीन है, I know you can understand. कि उसमें क्या है कि husband सुबह उठ रहा है and he wakes up and he sees that his wife is actually working at the corner of the house. And ये देखता है, इस तरह से दिखाया गया है कि दोनों साथ में सोए थे. Okay. फिर वो देखता है कि तकिए के नीचे उसका या तो कुछ गहना मिलता है या फिर कोई बाल मिलता है. And he shows that and he looks at the lady. She smiles and he smiles. It's the best way you can actually say everything. It has said everything.
I'll tell you this. When you talked about that, I think one of the Indian movie में इतना pure and soft romance, but by saying everything which has happened there, So it's a very, they get married, जो movie में जो दिखा रहे. I think the first thing where he's a bachelor guy, lives in a top floor flat, a single room flat, and all these things there, right? And then all of a sudden he has to get married. Because I think he goes to his friend's house, whose sister is getting married, and then the groom refuses to marry, so he had to marry.
Achha.
So he basically comes here. I think the first scene is again, so he basically comes in there and when he meets Sharmila first. The hero meets Sharmila.
So he's a hero?
Soumitra Chatterjee. Right. He has done the most movies of Satyajit Ray. So Soumitra Chatterjee, so he basically says one thing. He just looks at him and says, asks about the name and all. He says, "Tomar onushochona hoy na?" अनुशोचना मतलब क्या है? पश्चाताप बोलते हैं।
ओके
जब तुम्हारा नहीं होता है तो वो लेडी बोलती है,
मतलब ये सवाल मैं समझा नहीं, तुम्हारा पश्चाताप नहीं होता है
मतलब तुम तो एक कोई एस्टेब्लिश घर में शादी वादी करने वाले थे। मैं तो एक छोटा सा प्रेस में काम करता हुआ बंदा हूँ, मेरा पैसा नहीं है, मैं ये घर में रह रहा हूँ, तुम ये घर।
अच्छा, तुमको पश्चाताप तो नहीं हो रहा है मुझसे शादी करके?
शादी।
अच्छा ओके।
तो शर्मिला जवाब देती है, इतना भारी भरकम वर्ड मेरे को समझ में नहीं है। बोल के चुप हो जाती है। एंड देखिए द रोमांस, द वे इट शोज देयर, दिखाता है कि जो अपू का जो घर था ना, उसका विंडो था, कर्टन नहीं था। शादी करने के बाद कर्टन लगता है। सटल चेंजेस। ये इनफैक्ट वहां पे दिखाता है कि अपू सिगरेट पीता है। सुबह वो जब जाता है तो सिगरेट का पैकेट ऐसे खोलता है, देखता है लिखा है खाने के बाद एक, तुमने प्रॉमिस किया। So I think that the romance, I think it's a very short-lived romance which is shown there. But the romance, what is there, right? It's amazing. Another biggest movie, another very famous movie of his is called Charulata. This is again on a Tagore story, which was done. It talks about a woman who is married but childless, but alone, falls in for her deva. And there's an amazing romance there. There are so many unsaid romance without showing anything vulgar, without showing anything. There is this. There is a romance there. I think the romance has been part of Satyajit Ray's most of the movies in one way or other. But you cannot call that movie as an out and out love story or out and out kind of that. But romance has always been.
अच्छा, आपने बोला था कि he started writing his own movies as well. So tell about that a little bit.
तो ये अभी जो writing पे बात है ना, so just not the movie around it. So what I said earlier, that he comes from a family who are, his father, his grandfathers were writers. And in 1941, he wrote 2 English short stories, and that's it. He never touched writing. Yes, he was doing a lot of writing for his movies, when he was doing the movies from 1955 to 60, 61. In 1961 or 62, he first came out with a movie which was entirely his own writing, his own story.
उससे पहले उन्होंने अपनी खुद की कहानी पे नहीं बनाया। Okay.
So that was a movie called Kanchenjunga.
Kanchenjunga is that peak. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Story on that. So that's the background of that story. The story is done in Darjeeling. So that's the first story. That's the first story as a movie. But then since you touched upon that writer part, so how that writer started happening with him? I think writer part उनका कहाँ पे शुरू हुआ? His grandfather started a magazine जिसका नाम था संदेश।
एक मिनट, उनके ग्रैंडफादर जो बच्चों की साहित्य बनाते थे वो,
उन्होंने एक मैगजीन स्टार्ट किया।
ओके,
बच्चों का मैगजीन।
ओके, दैट वाज अ किड्स मैगजीन। ओके,
और कॉल्ड संदेश। संदेश बंगाली को सबको पता है मिठाई है, और संदेश भी है, मैसेज भी। तो इट्स अ बोथ मीठा मैसेज। तो 1961, at that time he was doing the
सॉरी दादा, एक चीज पूछ लूं मैं। उनके दादाजी और उनके पिताजी की डेथ के बाद ही हिमसेल्फ मूव टू हिज मामा's प्लेस, तो मैगजीन शायद बंद हो गई थी।
मैगजीन पूरा बंद था,
राइट?
मैगजीन पूरा बंद था क्योंकि प्रेस उठ गया था, सब कुछ चला गया था, राइट? तो 1961 is the time when he was doing the documentary on Rabindranath Tagore on his birth centenary. Jawaharlal Nehru asked him to do the documentary.
Okay.
So he did the documentary. Jawaharlal Nehru, not only Jawaharlal Nehru, Indira Gandhi, Indira and him were not that age-wise different, and Indira was also a student of Shantiniketan. So anyway, so while doing that, I think he had another good poet friend of his, very famous poet in Bengal, Subhash Mukherjee. So they were chatting with each other, and he said, you had that magazine of your grandfather. Can we not start that? And Sati said, why not? And he was the chief editor of that magazine from 1961 to 1992 for 31 years.
Oh, wow.
But why editor? I think what happened there? He was editing. He was doing some film writing and all these things. He was editing the magazine. And while editing the magazine, he initially was mainly doing illustrations, which is his still forte, right? He was an illustrator. But then he started doing some small poems, mostly, Lewis Carroll, Edward Lear, he was doing translations of those.
In Bengali.
He was doing translation. And then he comes up with a character named Professor Shonku. A scientist, an eccentric scientist to be fair, who's basically someone has found his diary because he has gone to Mangal mein hai wo, and all these things, and in the scientist, and these are start talking about that. So this guy is, Professor Shonku. Again, he's an inventor. He's a brilliant scientist. He has invented so many things in his life, and basically he starts with we found 21 diaries, and then gradually it went on increasing. So he first started writing science fiction with Professor Shonku. No one knew that it would be so famous. People started people started reading about that. And then in 1965, he comes up with his detective. Feluda. He's come to the detective. And very interestingly, how Feluda came in there. So Sandesh was always, as you said, a predominantly kids magazine, but all the good writers were writing all kids things. And then at that time, there was another very famous magazine, still a very famous magazine called Desh.
Sandesh.
That's Desh, only Desh. Desh, हमारा देश हमें देश. तो वहां पे उनके जो एडिटर थे वो बोले भाई मेरे को कुछ लिखा दो. बोला यार तुम्हारा तो बड़ों का मैगजीन है, मैं तो बच्चों के लिए लिखता हूँ, मैं तो बड़ों के लिए लिखता नहीं हूँ. बोला यार तू कुछ लिख दे ना, वो बड़ा हो छोटा हो जो भी हो तो लिख दे. And then he came up with this detective of his Feluda. And the thing here is, uske baad, very interesting thing as a writer of his is, Desh, the magazine, which was predominantly a adult magazine, the first readers of that magazine was the kids, because they would read the Feluda story, and then the kids would, then only the adults. If you look at it from an editor of that magazine, it was a brilliant marketing strategy, because he's actually making the kids also read it, and then again another part of it, another new volume of sales is happening. But then Satyajit came in there. So Feluda, his detective thing starts. Now here I think another very interesting comparison which comes up with the person who was Satyajit's favorite author, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. So, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's two most famous characters were
Sherlock Holmes, Dr. Watson.
And Professor Challenger. There's another character. Professor Challenger, eccentric, scientist. You see the context. So you have got,
So his character was influenced by that character.
A bit of influence with this, but then over the period of time, Professor Shonku became much more sober, much more thing. And another thing, when you look into all this writing, with the speed Shonku, be it this, apart from here, Talniku and other characters also. And as I said, brilliant short stories. 12, he used to write those books in a dozen stories. You'll have 12 story, Aro ek dozen, Aro Baro, and it will be all 12 series, 12 stories, short stories, brilliant short stories. Usually,
I think we have seen a glimpse of it in Ray.
His characters,
Netflix. Yes.
His characters, mostly in the short stories, would be mostly single, loner, and very less female characters. That's what a lot of people had a complaint. He always said, don't worry, my movies always have plenty of female characters. So, at least in my writing, I'm writing about something else. But those characters always will encounter something which is completely extraordinary. And that is what it is. Or something extraordinary will happen. He talks about a dog which laughs. Okay, and there are so many different brilliant short stories which he has written. It's a pity, as I said, it's a pity that सत्यजीत जो इतने बड़े बड़े ऑथर थे, उनका नाम बंगाल, इन वर्ल्ड में तो छोड़ो, मतलब बंगाल के बाहर इंडिया, सारा इंडिया में भी नहीं किया. आई थिंक नेटफ्लिक्स ने थोड़ा किया, 5 लोग रे के नाम बोले, शॉर्ट स्टोरी के बारे में जाने, बाकी लोग तो सब उसको फिल्म डायरेक्टर बोल के कुछ लोग जानते थे बाकी. बट इट्स अ पिटी,
मतलब एज एन ऑथर उन्हें नहीं जानते थे. तो एज एन ऑथर उनके किसी वर्क्स को रिकॉग्निशन मिला
इंटरनेशनल? बिकॉज वो अब हमेशा अपने लैंग्वेज में लिखे हैं, अपने बंगाली लैंग्वेज.
अच्छा, इज रिटन इन बंगाली.
रविंद्रनाथ टैगोर को भी नोबेल मिलने के लिए उनको गीतांजलि को ट्रांसलेट करना ही पड़ा था भाई.
या you have to, अगर इंटरनेशनल लेवल पे
जाना है
तो you have to talk in international language.
रविंद्रनाथ टैगोर जब यहाँ पे आए थे 1912 को, वो ट्रांसलेट करके लाए थे, अपना गीतांजलि को सॉन्ग ऑफरिंग बोल के लेके आए थे.
No, but he had very Western, affluent upbringing.
But he never. But this is what it is. So you need to think about this. So this is what is a personality. Is a person, right? Very Western person. You know, is a very Western person. His movies, but he has always made movies which is very much Indian in context and subject. But if you look from a concept of cinema, it's international. That's why the worldwide, you know, if you, as I said, from 1960s to, you know, late 1970s and other, whole world, you know. तो basically बात ये है ना कि उनकी जो वही बात कर रहे थे हम लोग कि रविंद्रनाथ टैगोर को भी ट्रांसलेट करना पड़ा अपना नोबेल प्राइज के लिए. तो उनके बहुत सारे दोस्त थे, as I said, you know, internationally उनके बहुत सारे दोस्त थे and all this. But for them he was very much a director, जो अपना फिल्म बनाए, जो अपने फिल्म के लिए स्टोरी लिखे हैं, जो अपने फिल्म के लिए म्यूजिक कंपोज किए हैं, स्क्रीन प्ले किए हैं, कैमरा किए हैं, सब कुछ किए हैं. बट एज ए राइटर प्रॉबली वो भी अपने आप को उतना बाहर लेके नहीं गए. As I said, he was always an editor of a magazine, right? He was always writing for a magazine, of his own magazine. In fact, that actually, this editing, a magazine editor, him being a magazine editor also made him a good writer. So he was doing the writing, but then unfortunately, as we said, his stories didn't get translated that much in outside Bengal languages and others. And I think in his lifetime also, he also never, you know, worked on that. He was happy writing the stories. He wrote the stories, he wrote all those novels and everything, which became movies. And so wherever possible, it became movies. Two Feluda movies were there. One was done in Rajasthan, another one was done in Banaras. So, but I think as an author, he probably restricted himself, I would say. You know,
मैं ये बोलूँगा कि यार एक आदमी जो इतना सारा काम कर रहा है, when he's making movies, he's editing things, when he's writing, of course कोई ना कोई एक टैलेंट है जो तुम्हारा थोड़ा सा बैक बेंच पे चला जाता है, when the other ones are more profitable.
बैक बेंच में नहीं गया, but
I think
prominent.
No, I think it's a different thing, or maybe I don't know if it is documented or not, क्योंकि आप देखो कि he is coming from a Western influence society. मतलब he has complete,
एक मिनट, सोसाइटी मत बोलो उसको.
He has complete leverage बोल सकते हैं ना. He has complete leverage to that society. अगर if he had wanted, तो उनकी कहानियां इंटरनेशनली छप सकती थी, ट्रांसलेट हो सकती थी. तो इज देयर एन इंटेंशन कि उनको बंगाली में ही लिखना था, बंगाली में ही रखना था कहानियों को?
नहीं, उनकी लाइफ को देख के ऐसा लगता नहीं कि ही वाज वेरी कन्फाइंड. अब एक बात बता, अगर तुम एक मूवी बना रहे हो जिसको तुम इंटरनेशनली लेके जा रहे हो, लेकिन तुम एक स्टोरी लिख रहे हो, तुम चाहो कि नहीं यार मैं इसको इंडियन में रखूं. आई थिंक इट वाज नॉट इंटेंशनल. एक बात बता यार,
बता रहा हूँ, इसमें एक इन्फ्लुएंस दे रहा हूँ. एट द एज ऑफ 7 Satyajit met Rabindranath Tagore. So he went there like everyone brave person and took a diary. एक अपना डायरी लेके गए थे रविंद्रनाथ के पास. तो रविंद्रनाथ बोले कि तुम डायरी रख के जाओ, मैं कल कुछ लिख के देता हूँ. तो नेक्स्ट डे उन्होंने एक पोएट्री लिख के दिए थे. तो वो पोएट्री बेसिकली ये बोलते हैं कि हमने तो सारा दुनिया घूमा है, सारा दुनिया का सब कुछ देख लिया है, बहुत कुछ देख लिया है, बट घर के बाहर जो ग्रास के ऊपर जो पानी है ना, वो हम कभी नहीं देखते. आई थिंक सत्यजीत वाज लाइक दैट. जब वो मूवी बनाए ना, उनकी मूवी था सारा दुनिया के लिए. वो मूवी के अंदर जो म्यूजिक जो सब कुछ था, सब कुछ था. बट ये जो उनकी जो राइटिंग था ना, इट वाज अ वेरी, उनकी जो
Personal thing.
वेरी, आई वोंट से पर्सनल, बट वेरी लोकल, वेरी थॉट प्रोसेस. पर हाँ, जब नेटफ्लिक्स में रे बनाया, हमको वो स्टोरी देख के लगा नहीं वो बंगाली स्टोरी है.
हाँ, इट वाज वेरी, मतलब
वो
बहुत
शायद
प्रोमिनेंट थे.
उस टाइम पे वो स्टोरीज जो शॉर्ट स्टोरीज एंड ऑल दिस थिंग्स व्हाट ही डिड, आई थिंक वो स्टोरीज को अपने लिए एंड बहुत क्लोजली रखे थे अपने आप को. आई थिंक उनको लेके, उनको पब्लिकेशन लेके बहुत दूर नहीं गए. आई थिंक एवरीवन वाज नोन हिम एज अ, एंड अगेन ही आल्सो रिफ्यूज्ड टू राइट दोस स्टोरीज इन इंग्लिश. उन्होंने खुद
हाँ, यही मेरा पॉइंट यही है.
पर उन्होंने इंग्लिश
ऐसा
में बुक
क्यों?
लिखे हैं. उन्होंने इंग्लिश में बुक लिखे हैं, आवर फिल्म्स, देयर फिल्म्स एंड ऑल दिस थिंग्स. ही वाज अ prolific speaker and a writer.
No, अच्छा, he has, आपने क्या बोला कि he has written books in English?
English for movies, our films, their films, Deep Focus, where he talks about films. Where he talks about films.
मतलब मुझे लगता है कि यार ये जो क्वेश्चन है तुम्हारा कि वो बंगाली में लिखने के बाद, जो स्टोरीज लिखने के बाद वो इंटरनेशनली या कहीं भी जा सकते थे. He has all the means to do it, but he didn't had that maybe the interest and energy की
No, but
बात
we
आती
can't
है.
assume. That's what I'm saying कि
But we
उनकी
cannot also-
biography में
नहीं,
या फिर आपकी रिसर्च में ऐसा निकल के आया कि why he had made that conscious decision.
नहीं, I think
और या
he
फिर
has,
ऐसा नहीं.
ये ऐसा, I think there was, I won't say it was a conscious decision or something like that, but I think he had catered this for a very, very specific audience, and he kept those stories like that. And I think and that is what it was. I think his stories, I think Felu, everyone, or Shonku and others, it had a proper potential to go ahead and do that. But I think he was fiddling with so many things at the same time, I would say. That's the reason probably he never focused.
But do you think that people are discovering his stories now? Because as you were saying, his story got converted into a Netflix short film thing. So are people discovering his work now more in writing? या फिर ऐसा भी नहीं है?
I think ऐसा नहीं है, मुझे लगता है, क्योंकि मैंने इसकी जो पहली स्टोरी पढ़ी थी सत्यजीत रे की, I read it in Reader's Digest. 1-2 पेज की स्टोरी थी और बहुत बचपन की बता रहा हूँ मैं. रीडर डाइजेस्ट में पढ़ी थी, तो दैट मीन्स इट वाज नॉट completely confined.
Yeah.
It was not confined. It was not his conscious decision to, उसको expand नहीं या broadcast उन्होंने consciously नहीं किया. Because I think, of course, it can be debated कि यार एक आदमी जो 100 काम कर रहा है, वो 101वां काम करने के, ठीक है यार, it's okay. वो मूवी बनाने का भी बहुत बड़ा बिजनेस है. एडिटिंग, हिज राइटिंग, हिज कैलीग्राफिंग, वो 10 चीजें और भी कर रहे थे. तो मे बी उनका एक बहुत प्रोमिनेंट टैलेंट बाहर ब्रॉडकास्ट नहीं हुआ मेरे ख्याल से.
No, yeah, that's fine. But मैं जो पूछ रहा हूँ ये है कि are people discovering his work now more? ऐसा है? Do you see trend?
I think there is, look, people, I think it all depends. Look, as I said, ये जो, I think एक चीज हमको याद रखना है कि ये लोग जो person like Satyajit Ray and others, so they did a lot of things for, a lot of movies and all this, but I think they were a class apart a bit in one way, in terms of their thought, in terms of their everything around that. So probably they
class apart
मतलब ये मैं बोल रहा हूँ ना, वो जो you keep on talking about Karan Johar, right? You keep talking about Karan, when you talk about Karan Johar and others, right? करण जौहर मास के लिए मूवी बनाता है भाई, एकदम पूरा मास के लिए, जो सलमान खान की जो मूवी होता है और गोविंदा की जो मूवी होता है, सत्यजीत राय कभी वो मूवी बनाया नहीं, कभी सोचे भी नहीं वो मूवी बना पाएंगे. पर हाँ, अपने हिसाब से वो जो सोचे, जो मास के अच्छा लगेगा वो अपना बनाया. कुछ जगह पे मास को पसंद आया, कुछ जगह पे नहीं आया. इसीलिए इनफैक्ट इवन उनका राइटिंग भी जैसा था कि उन्होंने बनाया है. देयर इज अ वेरी स्पेसिफिक पीपल जो लोग पढ़ते हैं. आई थिंक व्हेन वी टॉक अबाउट, people are discovering brilliant people every day. हम रोज ही कुछ ना कुछ brilliant जब when you stumble upon something new, you discover that person. That's how Satyajit Ray is also getting discovered. जब सत्यजीत रे के retrospective tribute में recently एक मूवी बना था, पत्थर पंचाली, मेकिंग ऑफ पत्थर पंचाली लेके, I went to see in the Star City Birmingham. There were 4 or 5 British people who were sitting there and watching. And then they were talking about Satyajit Ray. So it was really nice to see that हमारे इंडिया में कितने लोग जानते हैं पता नहीं, बट यहाँ पे लोग गोरे लोग बैठे हैं देख रहे हैं. So the fact what you're seeing here, people are discovering them, but it might not be that हाँ ये एक मास फेनोमेना हो गया, सब पढ़ रहे हैं, सब देख रहे हैं, ऐसा नहीं. but लोग अभी भी उनको जानते हैं, लोग अभी भी उनको मानते हैं. And a lot of people, lot of directors have always said that, be it directors, be it others, they have always said that they have been influenced in some way or other by Satyajit. As I said, I was talking about Martin Scorsese. I'm talking about Steven Spielberg. They said they have been influenced by Satyajit Ray, right? I think if these two names are not big enough, so I think I'm just saying that people discover him. He has got. I think he has got so many facets in his personality. It takes a lifetime to explore him, to understand all his brilliance, all the things which he's got. Probably, maybe 10 years down the line, people, his writings will go crazy in the international market. You never know. You probably need a proper marketing person, who will come up with a nice thing, a campaign, and he might make it. People still watch his movies. There are still movies like the movies which can get released in theater, and people will still come and watch it. So it's not different that I won't be surprised that if his stories do not get his stories do not get that.
अच्छा,
Another thing, a bit of there is a royalty question which is also there. How long the royalty and all these things which is going to be there. So once everything is it 40 years, 40 years or 50. I think once that is done, once it has become much more royalty free in terms of the public, in terms of this, I think that time it has got a potential, because it's a very the stories his normal short stories can definitely become a very much put into a Western context. His Professor Sonku, which is at the science fiction side, can definitely be put into a lot of things. Felu is a very, very Sherlock Holmes in a very Bengali terms, in a very, very, very Bengali way to look at it. But yes, he's a superhero also, and one way to do that. But I'm sure that he would get. It will definitely get marked.
अच्छा दादा, जैसे आपने उनको बताया कि he's a director, he's a writer, आपने एक word also use किया था कि music. Was he also doing music for his own movies, or was he doing just music for the sake of music?
The music के बारे में again with his upbringing, as we said, he listened to lots of Western music, Beethoven, Bach, Mozart, and everything, and जब बोले थे शांति निकेतन गए थे, एक ज्यूइश प्रोफेसर, उनके घर में सब रिकॉर्ड्स थे, तो वो जाके वहां पे वेस्टर्न म्यूजिक सुनते थे. तो एक वेस्टर्न म्यूजिक सुनना, बहुत अच्छा पियानो बजाते थे, पाखवाज बोलते हैं, जो एक ढोलकी टाइप ही एक इंस्ट्रूमेंट है, वो खुद बजाना सीखे थे वो, एंड एक म्यूजिक सेंस था उसके अंदर. तो उनकी जब मूवी जब शुरू हुआ पत्थर पंचाली, दैट मूवीज म्यूजिक वाज डन बाय पंडित रविशंकर. उसके बाद वाला मूवी में अली अकबर, अली अकबर खां, विलायत खां, they have all given music. But then Satyajit started feeling that जब वो म्यूजिक कर रहे हैं ना, जब ये जो all this when I speak about रविशंकर जी या अली अकबर खां या विलायत खां, ये लोग सब बहुत बड़े उस्ताद हैं, बहुत अच्छा काम किए हैं. पत्थर पंचाली is definitely one of the रविशंकर अभी भी बोलते हैं, तो भी गाना आता है उनको. तो बट उनको लग रहा था कि ये लोग अपने लिए कर रहे हैं म्यूजिक, ये अपना म्यूजिक है, इसमें मेरा वो जो टच है ना वो नहीं आ रहा है. मतलब it's not my, I'm liking it, but it's not exactly like mine. Then he basically said the first movie called Teen Kanya, in which he started saying, no, let me do my music, let me do a bit of music. And then वो अपना म्यूजिक देना शुरू किया. A very distinctive touch on his music, it's a very, उसके म्यूजिक सुन के ही पता चलेगा this is Satyajit Ray. It's a very, 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 the tune is so him. So I think, and then after that he went with some musicals.
Acha.
He went some musicals. There was one movie called Gupika and Bhagavan. It's very much a musical movie. It's his grandfather's story. Very much musical. all songs, and I think that movie gave, that movie, I just didn't finish it. That movie gave, I think you have heard about this guy called Anup Ghoshal, right? You've all heard one song of his,
which is
तुझसे नाराज नहीं जिंदगी है
गाना तो सुना है.
The guy who wrote it, the guy who sang it, he was given debut by Satyajit Ray in Gupshup and
अच्छा.
His name is Anup Ghoshal. He again went on a musical, and then Gopika and Bhagavan second part, Hirak Raja Deshe, again was a musical, but that whole movie was in rhyme, was in poem. Again, his own writing. But as I said, he's trying, his music, he's because he feels his music, he has used Tagore's music, he has used, Kishore Kumar sang for him in Charulata and Gaurav Bhaide. Kishore Kumar sang for him. But I'm saying that, he used a lot of authors, a lot of singers who are not very famous, apart from Kishore and other, not very famous, but they have come up with some amazing songs. Huge influence of huge usage of Rabindra Sangeet, Rabindranath Tagore's songs, and plus his own music. It became a very distinct feature. And then those musics were not just his own movies. He has given music to a number of Bengali directors. And I think one of the most famous ones is he's given music to James Ivory and Ismail Marchand's movies. Shakespeare Wala is one of the biggest example in which he has given the music of it. So, he has, and again, if you listen to his music, you will not say, when we were earlier talking about his Western influence. Yes, he has learned a lot of Western, but his music doesn't talk about that. When he makes the music, it doesn't talk about music. It talks about the Indian music also. It talks about the fusion. So, again, you need to come back. We are always coming back to that point, That person, when you meet that person, when you see that person's movies, when you see that person's writing, when you see that person's calligraphy, when you see that person's music, it's very international. And I think that is what makes him apart. Being very much within Bengali, being very much within, wearing Punjabi and, pajama, what we call it. Whenever I had gone to outside, he has worn it, but very, very, very out and out a Bengali person. But then, rubbing shoulders with who's and who in the world, in his own style, without compromising it. I think at this today's world, it's very difficult for someone to identify why Satyajit Ray was great. I remember I went to see, not very much exactly like a contest, but I went to see this movie in 1983, that cricket movie, right? The movie bombed the box office. Right? And the people, I think that the editors said, yes, it has been fictionalized and all this, but the team really worked hard. The movie didn't work out because today's generation doesn't know what 83 is all about. Today's generation doesn't know what 1983 World Cup did for India. They made BCCI what it is today. That was 1983, beginning of that. But they don't know. For them, Dhoni's sixer is much bigger. So, the thing here is, this is what it is, it's difficult to assess someone's, when we talk about, it's difficult to assess someone's legacy. He died in 1992. His last movie released in 1991. So 1991 to 2024 today, which is 33 years. Almost many of our lifetime. It gets, over the period of time, you might not feel exactly how much his legacy has been reverberating still. However, what I feel here, when that person was there, when that person talked about, made those films, when that person wrote those things. I was talking about, he revolutionized a poem, revolutionized an adult magazine where it was read by kids. It's now in today's world, what does it make any sense? In 1965, in one edition, he started this trend and then everyone moved into the trend. Did he? he always wrote about kids. Was it that he never bothered about writing for adults? Because he said he only wrote 2 short stories about which is adults, and he said adult बड़ों के लिखने के लिए बहुत लोग हैं, मैं बच्चों के लिए लिखता. He always concentrated about that. Now, ये जो तुम when you talk about his movies talked about every possible subject. His movies didn't even bother touching wherever it was there. Again, the government, he poked, he posted messages against the government also one there. Hira Praja Deshe, the movie, when you talk about social thing, Hira Praja Deshe movie starts with a scene where the king, it's basically a diamond king. So the story is it's about a king who's a very cruel king who has a diamond mine and who basically makes everyone, work in the mines. And whomsoever wants to revolt, he has a scientist who has created a machine in which you just put the people there, add a mantra, and they just come out by their brainwashed with a mantra, and that's it.
Yeah, how revolutionary this idea.
And it happened, I'll tell you this, it happened after the emergency. Indira Gandhi. Okay? And there is one scene which starts with a scene that there is this king's, there's a big murti is there, and someone breaks the nose. Actually, it happened in one of the Indira Gandhi statues, someone broke the nose.
Oh.
So, and he was very friendly with Indira. They were almost not even batchmates, but they knew each other. They had a mutual respect. But this is what it is all about, You attack someone, you attack the system, but without again going beyond the personal, the respect and the gravity around it. This is what it is all about. They make the statement whenever it's required. They make the social statement, but again, they did it within the system. They did it within the respect. I think those kind of gentlemen are no more there.
एक चीज बोलता हूँ कि विरासत में जमीन तो किसी को भी मिल जाती है, अपने हिस्से का आसमान खुद ही कमाना पड़ता है. And he was one of those guys who did it.
नहीं, उनको विरासत में मिला था.
ऐसे नहीं, whatever he got it, नहीं, जमीन मिल गई थी. But the stature which he reached, when I say आसमान, is the stature which he reached. He earned it himself.
मतलब जो बोलते हैं ना कि कुछ तो आता है, आया था उनके अंदर में. उनका जो बोलते हैं हम बोलते हैं ना मेधा जो होता है ना, जो दिमाग, मतलब वो आया था. There are many things which you can polish. There are many things which you can polish. बहुत कुछ पढ़ सकते हो, जान सकते हो. But एक जो होता है ना, एक इंटेलिजेंस होता है, एक जो होता है ना, देख के तुमको लगता है कि इस अंदर में एक बंदे का ब्राइटनेस, वो तुम लेके पैदा होते हो. वो कोई प्रैक्टिस करके नहीं हो सकता.
नहीं, प्रैक्टिस करके नहीं होता. देखो जो आर्ट होता है, आई थिंक ही लव्ड हिज वर्क. He loved his art and he sees it as perfection. I think there was some element of it कि यार जब तक वो, जैसे उन्होंने अपना म्यूजिक खुद बनाया, because even though world maestros were giving it, he was not satisfied कि यार वो flavor नहीं आ रहा जो मैं चाह रहा हूँ. Let me do it myself. And I don't know, did he had a formal education in music?
No.
1955 to 1991, 1992 he died. He made 36 films. 36 years, 36 films. Right?
Okay.
Every year, one film. At the same time, he's editing a magazine. He's writing. He's composing music. He's going to the whole world to collect trophies. He's going there for jury. How a person can do it? He's thinking about one film along that. He's thinking about another film. He's thinking about a script of that. At the same time, he's every year, as I said, in those from 1950 to this, he has come to UK for 17 times. And, Berlin, Venice, he's going US, again, from after 1984, after he had his stroke, heart attack. After that, anywhere he's traveling and others were very limited. After that, he hardly traveled. 84, he had a bypass. And that time, he was one of the, India mein bypass nahi hota tha. वो US gaye the bypass karne.
Mm-hmm.
But it didn't work out much. But it survived. Pacemaker bhi baitha tha anyway, but it didn't survive. But as I said, ये एक बंदा, मतलब क्या नहीं कर सकता है वो सारा दिन में. वो इफ यू सी 36 साल में 36 मूवी बने, हर एक साल एक मूवी आता था उनका, हर एक साल. उसके साथ साथ इतना कुछ चल रहा है.
उसके अलावा किताबें भी लिखी हैं,
किताबें लिख रहे हैं, म्यूजिक कंपोज कर रहे हैं, राइट, म्यूजिक कंपोज कर रहे हैं, अपना एडिटिंग, अपना जो मैगजीन का हर एक साल का एडिशन ले रहे हैं, और भी जो बाकी जो लेखन है लिख रहे हैं.
And then, as I said, he's going to.
अच्छा मेरे को एक क्वेश्चन है.
बोलो.
Satyajit Ray, how is he relevant for today's generation?
If you see his, I think that I think he's relevant because, as I said, his movies, whatever he has done, or his writings, whatever he has done, these are timeless. Like I would ask you one. I would say that if today, in terms of his writing, I would say, if someone asks you how relevant is Sherlock Holmes today, he's relevant because he's a great writing. He's intelligent. He gives gives so many things, and that's what Sherlock Holmes is all about, right?
मतलब आज की जनरेशन जो कि सत्यजीत रे की मूवीज देखे जाके या फिर उनकी राइटिंग पढ़े तो उनको क्या क्या मिलेगा, मतलब व्हाट विल दे गेट?
छुपा हुआ खजाना.
आउटलुक
an outlook which is 60 साल 50 साल 60 साल पहले वाला भी मूवी बना हुआ मूवी में भी so modern, which you can link in today's world. Those subtle touches, if you are ready to, if you have your eyes and ears open, if you have those subtle touches, you will see where exactly it is. You can very easily overlook those. You can very easily overlook those, and you can say, okay, ये क्या है यार. जब पत्थर पचरे 1955 में लिया था तब एक और एक बहुत at the same time was another very famous movie which was released by V. Shantaram called झनक झनक पायल बाजे.
Okay, I've seen that.
लोग बोले थे यार, जो जेनरिक मास बोला था यार, झनक झनक पायल बाजे बहुत क्या डांस है क्या. तो देन झनक झनक पायल बाजे भी अच्छा मूवी बना, लोग अभी भी जानते हैं, बट पत्थर पचले नेक्स्ट ईयर कान में जाके बेस्ट फिल्म अवार्ड मिलता है इसको. तो आई थिंक जो मैं वही बोल रहा हूँ ना, जो सटलिटी है जो हर एक मूवी में अभी भी इट्स स्टिल रेलेवेंट. इफ यू सी दोज angles, if you see those shots today, if you see those subjects which is touched, if you see those acting, the actors, the way they have acted, has never ever hardly has taken any professional actors to do the work. Some movies are there, but in majority of his heroes have come from completely from a non-professional background. He took an actor who used to work in an ad agency. And he liked that guy. He said, you are going to work in my movie because my next movie's characters are from an ad agency. So you can see that, the perfection. I'm not going perfection. But then the main thing here is every shot of that movie, every shot of those every movies which is there. Simabaddo, that movie what I'm talking about now, it talks about two managers in a company trying for a promotion. Right? And then one of them takes unfair means, sabotages a factory. The factory goes for a toss, but he gets a promotion because he saves something. Lord. And then I think his conscience, which is basically played by Sharmila here, Sharmila Tagore, she basically goes away because she doesn't like it. Now, again, it talks about the same thing. Pratidwandi is a movie in which he talks about an upright guy who said, who was the president during independence? Is a question which comes up. In the interview, how many stupid questions people ask? Who was the president of during independence? Then the hero asks, whose independence? Very relevant question. But then he doesn't get the job. He doesn't get the job. So, I would say there are so many subtleties are there in every movies which he has made, and I think you have to watch it in an open mind to see where exactly the subtleties are, and you will realize. Then you start realizing how relevant those stories are, how relevant those movies are in today.
So, if I have to ask you one final question, and to you as well, what is that one word you will use to describe Satyajit Ray? Or a phrase also?
God.
You?
तारीफ में आपकी जिस समय में सब कुछ कह गया, तारीफ में आपकी जिस समय में सब कुछ कह गया, दिल मुझसे कहने लगा बाकी बहुत कुछ रह गया.
सच में एक खत्म नहीं होता, but हाँ.
For me it would be to be discovered.
Yes, and I would want you to discover. I would want you to read, if not write, read, if not watch movies, read, and try to find out what exactly it's all about.
Definitely. I mean, this discussion has definitely intrigued my.
This is not a Satyajit Ray's writing though.
But still, it is about him. It is about him. And if you want to read it, this is what it is.
We are not promoting this book, by the way.